Welcome to the Nazareth College Centennial Podcast. I'm your host, Timothy Nealand, and in each episode I'll be guiding you through stories of amazing alumni, fascinating faculty, or the hidden history of the college. Today's episode.
It was with the cooperation of a man named Alex Matthews, whose child had been lead poisoned, that we finally made a breakthrough. We finally laid it out in such a way that the authorities could no longer say that lead paint poisoning of young children wasn't much of a problem.
My overall community, Greater Rochester, come unity. You got to have some efforts to get to the goal of unity. Come on, let's do it.
That was David Anderson. Dr. Anderson's been a community scholar at the College of Arts and Sciences and the School of Education since 2008. His relationship with Nazareth College is much longer. His daughter graduated from Nazareth. He's been at the college several times as a guest speaker. David worked with faculty and students at Nazareth College to prepare for a presentation at the International Underground Railroad Conference in the fall of 2007. In 2009, he was part of a delegation of Nazareth College faculty who traveled to Leeds, UK, to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Frederick Douglass's visit to that city. In 2017, he was a commissioner on the Frederick Douglass Bicentennial Committee, charged with celebrating the 200th birthday of Frederick Douglass 2018. He's an educator, scholar, storyteller, community organizer, and artist. David Anderson is celebrating his 90th birthday this month, interviewed in 1979 and again in 2019. It would be impossible to capture all of David's life in one podcast. This episode will focus on how his upbringing in Cincinnati and encounter with the ideas of Marcus Garvey shaped his life and career. His experience with Jim Crow Rochester in the mid-1950s, his work in the late 1960s and early 1970s to draw attention and get Monroe County to heed the dangers of lead poisoning in Rochester's inner city. And we end with his current work as a storyteller. David was strongly influenced by his parents, Willie Anderson and Mary Alice Anderson, who were part of the Great Migration of African Americans out of the South, moving from Limestone County, Alabama to Cincinnati, Ohio.
My mother and dad were migrants from Alabama. Dad was maybe 10 years older than my mother. They settled in Cincinnati. My mother was pregnant 8 times. I'm the only one that got out of the hospital.
Cincinnati, Ohio was as good and as sad as can be with a young black person in 20th century America. A loving mother and father, Mary Alice Bibb Anderson, my mother, come out of a farming community in northern Alabama and taken up marriage with a man, Willie David Anderson, from the same area of Alabama called Limestone County. Neither had much schooling. In fact, my father may have as much as 3 months total schooling, and yet I consider him a literate man. I saw my mother engage in what we would now call adult basic education sometime around 1937, 38, 39. Cincinnati, Ohio has a large percentage of black people, approximately 25%. There was a definite black community, churches and the lodges and so forth existed.
Another important influence on David was the movement created by Marcus Garvey, which shaped his ideas about community and a desire to educate and uplift African American children.
The drawing card for my family was the Garvey movement. We were staunch members of Division or Chapter 129, Cincinnati, Ohio. And that too was an educational atmosphere.
David and his family were Garveyites, members of Chapter 129, Cincinnati. Inspired by the call by Marcus Garvey for African peoples across the globe to serve one another, organize, and develop their inner strength to resist and ultimately demolish institutions of oppression. Marcus Garvey was born in Jamaica in 1887 and lived there until he was 14, after which he traveled to Central America and London. In London, he began to compare the experience of people from Africa with the plight of the Jews from Israel and began to talk of a black diaspora. He created a Pan-African movement, which he founded in 1914 as the Universal Negro Improvement and Conservation Association, usually just called UNIA. He viewed black people as a single world community whose original home had been Africa and called for the total decolonization of Africa and its unification in a single state. In 1916, he came to the United States and settled in Harlem, where he established a UNIA office. Let's hear this clip of Marcus Garvey himself, available from Wiki Commons, in which he talks about his movement and UNIA.
Fellow citizens of Africa, I greet you in the name of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League of the World. You may ask, what organization is that? It is for me to inform you that the Universal Negro Improvement Association is an organization that seeks to unite into one solid body the 400 million Negroes of the world, to link up the 15 million Negroes of the United States of America with the 20 million Negroes of the West Indies, the 40 million Negroes of South and Central America, with the 280 million Negroes of Africa. The great problem of the Negro for the last 500 years has been that of disunity. No one or no organization ever succeeded in uniting the Negro race. But within the last 4 years, the Universal Negro Improvement Association has worked wonders in bringing together in one fold 4 million organized Negroes who are scattered in all parts of the world. If anything praiseworthy is to be done, it must be done through unity. And it is for that reason that the Universal Negro Improvement Association calls upon every Negro in the United States to rally to its standards. We want to unite the Negro race in this country. We want every Negro to work for one common object, that of building a nation of his own on the great continent of Africa.
The mainstay of his organizations were a series of political centers in larger cities called Liberty Hall.
And that men and women from all over the United States, from the Caribbean, even one from Africa, would meet Sunday afternoons to proclaim that our destiny lay in unifying and someday helping to establish a government on the continent of Africa where all black people, irrespective of where they were born or where they would live, would have the representation and protection of a black government. And to a large degree, that has helped shape the kinds of ideas I express and my desire to be involved in my community.
David graduated from high school with a degree in graphic arts but could not find a job in his field. Looking for more opportunity, he joined the Air Force and was stationed in Okinawa, where he did photographic analysis for the Air Force. When he left the Air Force, he learned about a college, now called RIT, which had a degree program in photography, and that is what drew David to his adopted home of Rochester, New York.
The Rochester Institute of Technology was one of the few colleges in the country that offered a program in photography. And I had been an Air Force photographer and felt that I wanted to pursue that in civilian life. And upon hearing about RIT, as it's called.
When David moved to Rochester in 1956, the city was still governed by the Jim Crow system, which kept African Americans in the 3rd and 7th wards of the city. Insurance companies, real estate agents, and banks made it impossible for African Americans to relocate anywhere else in the county. And during the second migration of African Americans, which occurred between 1940 and 1970, the population of African Americans in Rochester tripled, creating poor housing conditions for residents in those wards.
Of course, we were largely segregated, and my first place of residence was number 60 Favor Street, in a house owned by a retired couple, a black couple, and with very reasonable rent. And there were a number of places like that around, owned by old-time Rochesterians. However, if you moved away from areas like that where there were established couples that owned homes, you found places where blacks were being exploited by the absentee landlords. White people who own houses in the inner city had begun to cut them up and to make kitchenette or worse or smaller kinds of apartments out of them, to charge exorbitant rent and not care about the upkeep of them. And after I left Mr. and Mrs. Morris' house to get into a little bit larger place, I too ran into that kind of situation. The second place I lived was on Ormond Street on the east side, and it was a house that had, I think, 5 families in it. So I began to get a little, but that wasn't bad for a man that didn't have anything. The third and fourth places I lived were a little bit more crowded. As I began to get out more and more, I could see the overcrowding. I could see the inadequate facilities in a place. Like there's a number of places that didn't have running hot water. There were some places that would have 5 and 6 families and only 1 bathtub. A place that which had an outside rear entrance, had 10 doors on each side of a long, narrow hall. And behind each of those doors was a family of 4, 5, or 6 people. And usually they would have a sheet on a string stretched down the middle of the room to try to give them some degree of privacy. And at the end of the hall was 1 toilet and 1 shower.
David spent a few years in Syracuse, where he pursued an M.A. in teaching technology at Syracuse University. He took a position as deputy director of the Urban League of Rochester. He used his position to fight against structural racism. When he was contacted by Dr. Walter Cooper about the dangers of lead paint, he led a crusade to get Monroe County officials to take it seriously and to protect the lives of young Black and Puerto Rican children living in communities where lead paint was a serious health threat. Project Uplift was a program created by David Anderson to tackle the problem of lead poisoning in Rochester. He recruited high school students to conduct research and do public demonstrations on the dangers of lead. And it was this effort, more than any others, that finally got the county officials to address the public health hazard of lead paint in Rochester, New York.
I returned in 1965 and held a series of jobs in education and community organization. I was the deputy executive director of the Urban League of Rochester, this from January 1967 through April of 1970. There we developed services and advocacy programs in youth development, job training, and placement for adults, voter education, and community organization. One of the highlights was the planning and coordination of a 4-day national conference called The Black Family, Myth and Reality. This was the opportunity to initiate the lead paint poisoning program.
In the first instance, lead paint poisoning of young children prior to 1985, I would say, was relatively a hidden or a problem nobody seemed to pay any attention to. Sometime around 1966, a couple of scientists from this area had noted that Dr. Evan Charney had made a small study of children in the inner city and noted that approximately 6% of preschool children were exposed to the danger of lead paint poisoning. He had no conclusive evidence, but there was sufficient information available to arouse his suspicion. These scientists also saw the work of people in other communities, such as Baltimore. They coupled this information with that of Dr. Charney's study, presented it to the health department. The reaction was essentially apathetic. Based on this, the members of the Rochester Community on Scientific Information came to the Urban League, where I was employed as the Deputy Executive Director, and asked if we would assist them in really getting more evidence that there was indeed a problem. since it is a fact that dilapidated dwellings where the peeling, chipping, leaded paint is likely to be found are dwellings that black children live in to a higher degree than others, we obviously were interested.
To tackle this threat, David Anderson created Operation Uplift.
Organized a task force of teenagers to actually go door to door in the Third Ward and ask people living there if they had young children, and secondly, if they might take samples of any peeling or chipping paint in their apartments. And on the basis of the samples these teenagers collected after school and on Saturdays, we presented this paint samples to the Rochester Committee on Scientific Information. They used 3 valid scientific methods for testing the paint and determined that about 7% of the young children in those areas would be exposed to the lead paint poisoning menace. Response from officials was still somewhat apathetic. From that point, we decided to try to make parents more aware of the problem, to get samples of urine from young children in such dwellings to see if it could be determined that they had ingested leaded paint. And as a matter of fact, we were successful in this, again, using black teenagers and cooperation of the scientific community. We again demonstrated that children were being lead poisoned. The health department still needed convincing. Had a live demonstration of how they went about testing for lead paint in the dwellings in the 3rd and 7th Ward. In fact, we'd even found an old door in an abandoned dwelling and brought that in. And these youngsters would role play around this door. One would take the role of mother or father, and the other 2 would be the people coming to inform them about the problem of leaded paint. They had a number of photographs of them actually doing this and other evidence that was part of the demonstration. And Mr. Alex Matthews, the father of Wanda, stopped and he said, you know, that door looks like the one on my house. Would you come to my house and test? And the youngsters did do that and determined that there was leaded paint.
Alex Matthews. Mr. Matthews and his family had migrated from Louisiana, and although he found a job at a slaughterhouse out in Henrietta, and also another job as a Doyle Protective Agency guard, what you might say. Mr. Matthews, all he could get for his family was a raggedy old shack on the west side of Rochester, near a hospital. It was 3 rooms, as I recall. They might have had an inside toilet, but it was sufficient level, I'm not sure. He had his wife and 3 children, little children, his mother-in-law and his grandmother, all living. That's all he could get. One night, he's at the slaughterhouse. He worked from like 10 p.m. to 7 in the morning, something like that. He gets the call from his mother-in-law. Oh, Alex, Lavelle, that's his wife. She took the baby to the hospital. Why? The baby's awful sick. Oh, okay, so I'm not sure he had time to change his uniform or not, but he went to Strong Memorial Hospital right near the university. And doctor said, well, okay, well, we checked it out. She's probably got a little virus of some kind. In the meantime, his wife is falling to pieces because she knows the baby's not normal. It's more than a virus. And so Alex persists. Why don't you test him for lead poisoning? They were dismissive of him. Another man from the Urban League happened to be there attending to one of his clients, going to take him home. He butted in. Next thing you know, not only security police have been called. They're going to put these Negroes in jail. Somebody from that, maybe it was a maid, maybe it was a secretary, I don't know to this day, called over to the medical school. And they eventually got a hold of Dr. Robert Berg, who was also a member of the Committee on Scientific Information, but he was the dean for the School of Preventive Medicine and Community Health. And I had some contact with him, and Dr. Berg came over and cooled everybody out and told them what and how to do. The baby is a grown woman today. So that broke the resistance, the apathy of the city, the Urban Renewal Department, and other agencies of the city were dragging their feet on this. That broke their back. And it appeared that the public health manager for the county came along as well. School parent advisors for the neighborhood, the adult. These were, for the most part, women, mothers, a few men, who were the liaison between home and school. That program was federally funded and it lasted for about 2 years. They had picked up off what the Project Uplift kids had started and were carrying it forward. They saved other lives because they were able to get into homes and talk with mother, especially mother, and help them devise ways of getting a landlord to get up off his butt and make some changes there. Excite the Department of Urban Renewal of the city to be avid about enforcing the rules. You don't let the property that people are going to live in run down. I was persuaded to write a paper which was subsequently published. I think I got it published in a national journal dealing with science and health. And it was working on the racial end of it because I think that was a significant part of the resistance. Public institutions and their war against the development of Black youth. But, lead poisoning is still a menace. There's less emphasis now on paint chips in slum areas. That's concerned about water, for example, and other places where people can get infected, which is good. But how many of those children, primarily Black and Puerto Rican, where we were pretty much have suffered, stopped Project Uplift for another. And then when I had SPAN, I go away one summer to start my PhD program, come back, they wiped the program out. And every effort I made before or since about getting at least the city school district to put that in curricula, whether it be on history or science or sociology, and it would be even more valuable to the students who get that information, who get the opportunity to test out some of that, who get the opportunity to live up to the standards set by the Project Uplift kids, some of whom now are in the grave. Hopefully can put some of it in the hands of Dr. Nealon, as you know his interest, but also other colleges, that it becomes not my story, but what little bit I can contribute, it becomes key information, valuable experience for students in terms of understanding how communities have dealt with issues and overcome them. That's the main thing, overcome them.
As we look back on the remarkable life and accomplishments of David Anderson, the Center for Public History is working on a documentary on Project Uplift, and we need your help. If you know someone, one of the youth who was involved in that, or you have access to the records related to that, please contact the Center for Public History. Our contact information will be given at the end of this podcast. David remained with the city school district until 1992, and since then continues to educate using storytelling, something he learned from his father. He once told an interviewer, "Storytelling is the core of my arsenal." As African Americans, David Anderson once said, we need to regard our story as a sacred trust to be passed on. By doing so, we will continue to stride toward freedom. He's a member of the Black Storytelling League of Rochester, which he helped found in 1994, and he also founded AQUABA, the Heritage Associates, an organization whose members share and reenact African American history. His use of living history evokes the past in a myriad of ways to ensure it is not forgotten and to encourage those living in the present to seek strength for the challenges of our day by remembering those who were agents of change in the past.
Reenacting occurs mainly with a group of ladies. We call ourselves AQUABA, A-K-W-A-A-B, the Heritage Associates. And our mission is to inform people through reenactments and tours of the Underground Railroad. And it was a vital part of the history that helped keep this nation together. And so I do some of the writing, but basically 4 of the sisters we have now, who are 10 to 20 years younger than me, they come on as Anna Murray Douglas, Frederick's wife, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, and several others. We pick elements in the history as we're able to understand it and present that scene through reenactment. They make their own costume. We do a lot of that. Once in a while for a city school, an equal amount of time for suburban schools. But a lot of people coming from outside the city, even from Europe.
David said what he was most proud of in life.
Becoming a father. I'm the father of 3, and each one has had his and her trials, but they are solid. And an assistant to my wife, the mother of the 3, that's the best part of my life. Yeah.
Our thanks to Kelsey Jones for her research, to Grace Caternolo and Daisy Van Arsdale for interviewing Dr. Anderson, to the local history and genealogy division of the Rochester Public Library for sharing with us their 1979 interview with Dr. Anderson, which is available online at Rochester Voices, to WikiCommon for sharing with us a recording made by Marcus Garvey in July of 1921. Thanks to the Free Music Archive for the music you heard today, Dust and Memories by Unheard Music Concepts. And of course, we thank you, the listener. If you like what you hear, let us know. You can email us at publichistory@nas.edu or call us at 585-389-2649.